When did you start looking at this work on your journey, William? Because I've heard you speak about, you know, half of your life you lived a certain way, and then you got to a stage where you really became ferocious to look into this work.
Ferocious.
And
Uh, I
yeah,
became a beast.
a
Um,
beast.
a beast. Yeah, no, I mean, I had a shit first half of my life. I'm not being a martyr or a victim or thing. It's just fact, right? Um, I, because talking about genius and intelligence and all of that, um, I had an experience growing up where, who knows why, because I don't think he did it with any of the other kids. My father picked on me and made me believe that I was stupid, like really stupid, that I was a moron. And it was compounded by teachers that I had that picked on me as well and really singled me out. So therefore terrified of using my own capabilities, my own intellectual capabilities and all that. And I actually grew up believing that I was that I was stupid, and I never, as a consequence, I never finished high school, and so life was very tough for me. And then I got very ill, and nobody could diagnose the illness. Um, Nobody knew what was wrong with me, but I just kept getting more and more sick. And then it had a lot of horrible physical and psychological symptoms, whatever the condition was, and then descending down to practically my deathbed, literally, really. I mean, I was on my deathbed, and from a point of where I was at rock bottom on my deathbed, I recovered miraculously. I revived and rebounded back to life and health very instantaneously. Um, and
Wow.
from that, you see, from that experience, it's a bit of a story, and I don't want to take up the time of the interview here to tell the story. People can read about it in my book, Success, The Secrets of Natural Success, because I recounted the story there. Um, but the important thing was the conclusion that I came to, because something in me recognized that my focus had changed. My focus had changed, and that clearly I realized that my focus had been from the time I started getting sick, and this is over a 10-year period, from the very beginning. And as the illness progressed, I became more and more obsessed with not being ill, and then in the end, fearing for my life, obsessed with not dying, and then started dying. So the more I was focused on what I didn't want, the more it came on. In the end, I recognized that and as I say, people can read about it in The Secrets of Natural Success. But I recognized in the end that what changed was my focus. I no longer focused on what I didn't want, that negative vision. I didn't have that negative vision anymore. And once that focus changed, my experience changed. And I wasn't expecting to become successful and rich and whatever, but just how can I use it, uh, this understanding of how my focus creates reality, just to be healthy, just to be sane, just to be happy, to live a decent life. And that there's a huge lineage of this understanding of how your focus creates your reality, that humans have understood this for thousands of years, and practiced this ability of self-consciously and in a self-aware way, using focus to create reality and to create the reality of your choice.
Amazing, incredible. I need to ask you, like, because I just think of people, that I come across in my world. Like, did you need to go to rock bottom, I guess, to then come out the other side? Because quite often we see people that have their challenges, and, like you say, continue to fixate and focus on the problems, not the solutions, and we perpetuate those problems even more, like you spoke of then. what allowed you to really shift the focus to be solution oriented and outcome oriented without slipping back to the old self? Because I see it so often here.
Well, you see, the thing is that's another myth that I'd really like to dispel, because I often hear that is, oh yeah, but you went to rock bottom, so that's what did it. But that's why I'm here, and that's why others like me are here. So people don't have to go to rock bottom. So it's like, as we were talking about before, Richard Branson didn't have to go to rock bottom to become a genius businessman. Genius golfers and tennis players, all that, can be taught to be genius golfers and tennis players. They don't have to nearly die for that to happen. You see, we can just do it out of choice, right? A really good example was this guy came to me a little while ago, not more than a few years ago, and he was a businessman, an entrepreneur, and he was making $3 million a year in his pocket after expenses and all that. That's what he has taken home. But that was his problem. He was working 16 hours a day and he was making 3 million. And he's going, how can I do better than this? Because I've just reached the limit of what I'm doing. And I'm working 16 hours. I can't work more than 16 hours a day. And I swear to God, this is true. He now works 2 hours a day and makes $30 million a year.
Wow.
You see, and so it does happen that people, not all people, because some people hit rock bottom and crash and die, right? And sadly, but also for some people like myself that hit rock bottom, they in a way forced to come to terms with themselves and reality and all of that. So you can see a big transformation in our lives, right? But it's not necessitated by desperation, and the most preferable way for it to be come about is not through desperation, but just the desire to realize your own potential, and what can be done with that potential. In a way, for me, my life has changed. I'm blessed because I've been blessed with really good health since then. I've been blessed with you know wealth and abundance in every sense, but it's not what I go for. Like the thing that drives me like crazy is getting to the bottom of this. um I would call it like reality of the creative condition of human beings, because we are supremely creative organisms. We're creating machines. And if people only knew that you create everything that's happening in your life. And the deeper down the rabbit hole of this work that you go, the more true you realize that to be, is that you're creating everything based on where your attention is, pure and simple. And it's an incredible realization, and particularly when you start using it
Mm.
to affect reality, when you start using it to be the predominant creative force in your own life, which means that the way your life turns out is how you determine it, how you shape it, how you decide it, rather than that you a victim of circumstances, of the economy, of other people's attitudes, the weather, whatever, all of the conditions outside of you. The average person, their life is herded and shaped by that, by circumstances, when it needn't be, because you can be the as I say, the predominant creative force in your own life. You can't be the absolute creative force in your own life. Like, then you'd be God, right? But you can be the predominant creative force in your own life, where you can learn to focus in a way that reality has no choice but to turn out the way you want it to be.
And that's extremely powerful when I listen to you put it like that, William. It's it. Who wouldn't want that? at the end of the day. But I think, like, even for myself, for a large part of my life, I wasn't even aware that was possible. It didn't even occur to me that you could go in this direction.